Next is about the Mudhagarbha. अथा तो मूढगर्भचिकित्सितं व्याख्यास्यामः यथोवाचपदबन्धनन्तरिः न अतो अन्यत् कष्टतमम् अस्ति यथा मूढगर्भशल्योद्धरणम् अत्र हि योनि यकृत् प्रीह अन्त्रविवर गर्भाशयानां मध्ये कर्म कर्तव्यं स्पर्शेन उत्कर्षण अपकर्षण स्थान अपवर्तन उत्कर्तन भेदन छेदन पीडन रुजुकरण धारणानि च एकहस्तेन गर्भं गर्भिणीं च अहिंसता तस्मात् अधिपतिम् आपृच्छ्य परं च यत्नम् आस्थाय उपक्रमेत. The interventions in case of obstructed labor conditions is the most difficult type of the surgical intervention, and the reasons are because you have to handle the organ, the fetus, saving the life of the mother as well as saving the life of the fetus, and the whole activity has to be done in the midst of many vital organs like the liver, spleen, intestines, and whole of the pelvic and abdominal organs, and the movements which you have to do and the procedures which you have to do also are many, which could be like lifting up, depression, and so on. The complex maneuvers have to be done to reduce and to facilitate the expulsion of the fetus, and hence the whole process is very complicated process. And Sushruta says you have to have a permission from the legal permission from the king and then follow the procedure. Of course, as far as the protocol of normal labor is concerned, that's already discussed in the Sharirasthana. The treatment protocol, the basic issue of the treatment protocol of the obstructed labor in the Mudhagarbha is already discussed in the Nidhanasthana. Virtually majority of the basic principles of the treatment are discussed in the Nidhanasthana. So here in the Chikitsasthana, the details which are given are very little, very few, and the all specified protocols are not really defined. Rather, the whole approach is something slightly different. Now, the Mudhagarbha or obstructed labor conditions and their details we have already discussed in the Nidhanasthana, and that's what Sushruta says. Tatra samasena अष्टविधाः मूढगर्भगतिः उद्दिष्टाः स्वभावगता अपि त्रयः सङ्गाः भवन्ति शिरसो वैगुण्यात् अंशयोः जगनस्य. The obstructed labor conditions and the possibilities of different sorts of the abnormal presentations we have already discussed in detail in the Nidhanasthana, and many of those basic principles of the management also are discussed. But one of the very basic issue in case of the normal labor is the ratio between the passenger, the passage, and then the force which is applied. There are three components in the labor. The passenger is the fetus, and in the fetus, the widest part of the fetus is the shoulder, amsa, and then the pelvis. These are the widest part, and then the normal position of the fetus for the normal delivery is a flexed position where the limbs are flexed. Suppose if the limbs are not flexed, that again becomes widest part. So, the passage is the outlet. The size of the width of the passage and the width of the passenger. These are the two issues which need to be proportionate. If there is a abnormal ratio is not present, then it results in cephalopelvic disproportion. The disproportion between the pelvic passage and the fetal organ, and that's what exactly Sushruta says. The major three components which can result in obstructed labor are Shiraso Vaigunyata, cephalic abnormalities. That's the neck being flexed. Instead of being flexed, it becomes extended before it passes out. Of course, all the steps of this labor we have discussed already in the Nidhanasthana, where that the step-by-step protocol of the flexion, then the extension, and then the rotation. This we have discussed in detail, so I will not repeat that. If at all there is an abnormality of these stages, the Shirasovaigunyata, it can result in the abnormality of the passage and the passenger. Then Amsayoho, the shoulder girdle, and it's the width as such, And Jaganasya, the pelvis. Pelvis again can be abnormal either due to the size of the pelvis or it could be due to the presentation, abnormal presentation also, either transverse or abnormal pelvic presentations which you have detailed already. This can result in obstructed labor, or it could be due to the abnormality of the pelvic girdle of the mother. There again you have the different sorts of the presentations. Or the third is the force applied, that's the uterus, is the uterine inertia, that also can result in the obstructed labor. So anyway, in all those conditions where the obstruction has occurred, intervention is necessary. Now, Sushruta is one of that texts where the surgery and the obstetrics are put together, and rather the surgeons would be handling the labor. This is written in 5000 years back. A comparison, comparison of the Western medicine till 18th or 19th century. I have just quoted, I have copied a few of the sentences from different authentic references, and none of these sentences are my own. To make it authentic, I have copied from the different sources as such. One of that sentence is, prior to 18th and 19th centuries, midwifery was well established, but obstetrics was not recognized as a specific medical specialty. Obstetrics was not considered as a medical specialty, but all that handling of the labor was under the area of midwifery, which is not a medical field. Midwives were not trained by a medical person, or they were not recognized as a medical personnel. It is only by the experience. Senior women who have delivered many times would be the better midwives as such, and that's how it was being considered. Only in the 18th century marked the beginning of many advances in the European midwifery, and based on the better knowledge of the physiology and pregnancy and labor, so training for the midwives about the anatomy and the physiology, it started only in the late 18th century, and by the end of the century, medical professionals began to understand the anatomy of the uterus and physiological changes, and that take place during labor. So this is just to compare. I am not saying that it's not a criticism, but comparison of the development of medical facilities in India 5000 years back compared to the West. In the West, up to 18th century, the obstetrics were not handled by physicians who were trained. Only after the 18th century, idea of handling the pregnancy and pregnancy related issue by the medical personnel came in, and the study of obstetrics in a medical school, it started much later. And these are the references. So I am not saying my sentences, these are the authentic sentences. Another of the different sources I have put in these sentences. 19th century marked an era of medical reform in Europe and increased the regulation over the profession. Major European institutions such as the College of Physicians and Surgeons considered delivering babies as a ungentlemanly work. Now, the only one of my contribution is this highlighting. So the sentence is from the original reference. So and refused to have anything to do with the childbirth as a whole. Even when Medical Act 1858 was introduced, which stated that the medical students could qualify as doctors, midwifery was entirely ignored. So in this is the European institutions, the situation of the European institution, and the midwives registration bill. It was in 1858. Midwives were to be registered, but physicians were not supposed to handle that. Then much later in 19th century, men were introduced into the field of obstetrics in 19th century and resulted in the change of the focus of this profession. This is what is as such. One of the representative photograph of men examining the female patient would be of you don't see but only feel. This is how it is done. This is one of the authentic photograph as a examination as such. So the whole idea, I am not just criticizing, this is not to criticize the issue. Comparison of the advancement of the medical facilities and the notion about the medicine in India and West. In India 5000 years back, the whole obstetric was a part of the surgical training medical school. Every Samhita would be having detailed description of the issues related to the pregnancy and delivery. Whereas in the West, it was only in the area of midwifery, and only much later in 18th century, it was added to the medical function. The gynecology directly resulted as a new separate field of study from obstetrics and focused on the curing of illness and indispositions of female sexual organs. So this is gynecology has developed as a part of the medicine also much later as such. Now my purpose of copying these references is not to highlight anything, but just to compare and feel somewhat elated about the Ayurvedic history. And so though it looks like a bit out of context, I think these informations are necessary. Then coming to the issue of this handling of the abnormal presentations, the step-by-step intervention would be, the first of the intervention would be by chanting mantras. Jivati tu garbhe, sutika garbha nirharane prayateta, nirhartum ashakye, चामनान् मन्त्रान् उपशृणुयात् तान् वक्ष्यामः इह अमृतं च सोमश्च चित्रभानुश्च भामिनि उच्चैः श्रवाश्च तुरगो मन्दिरे निवसन्तु ते इदम् अमृतम् अपां समुद्धृतं वै तव लघुगर्भमिमं प्रमुञ्चन्तु स्त्री तद् अनल पवन अर्क वासवाहते सह लवणाम्बुधैः अम्बुधरैः दिशन्तु शान्तिं मुक्ताः पशोः विपाशाश्च मुक्ताः सूर्येण रश्मयः मुक्त सर्वभयात् गर्भः एहि एह विरमामितः. Now, if the fetus is alive and you have to try this removal of the fetus or delivery of the fetus, and if it cannot be handled directly with the routine protocol, one of the suggestions by Sushruta is chant the mantras. Now, whether mantras can help in delivery or not, issue of controversy, criticism, that's another issue, so I am not going to that part. But the other part is a counseling of the mother. See, if the mother cooperates to a great extent, if there is a good expulsion force, if there is a good contraction, many of the borderline abnormalities can be handled effectively and pervaginal normal delivery is possible with minor resistance like of either just holding or maximum would be forceps, would be the other option. And this is true even now. The mantra which is suggested is again, it's just worshipping the nature and comparing or giving confidence to the mother, like this kind of a departure or separation is something like which is seen in the nature, and it's a comfort one, and it gives the freedom, like pashoho vipashashta, like a cow which is leaving its rope or whatever the rope tied and getting free. Similarly, your fetus is attempting to get it free. Help that. That's the issue. Or muktaha suryena rashmeha, something like the sun rays getting away from the source of the rays, the sun. Similarly, muktaha sarvabhayat garbha, the garbha is supposed to, fetus is supposed to get separated, and hence you have to cooperate. This would be the basic meaning of the issue. Now, in the Nidanasthana, Sushruta has very clearly mentioned, like, if at all there is a situation where the fetus is alive and the mother is dead, then there has to be a caesarean section or opening of the abdomen. Bastamara Kukshit Praspandade Yadi Takshana Janma Kaleja Pate Uddhar This is in the Nidanasthana, which we have discussed that part as such. So the only in those conditions where the mother is dead and the fetus is alive still, then in that condition you have to open the abdomen and then deliver the child. In the present day situation, you have that caesarean section. That the caesarean section, the word caesarean section came in for maybe there were two possible reasons. History would be having somewhat difference of opinion. The one of the opinion is that Caesar, one of the Roman king, had made a law that in such instances where the mother would be dead, then you have to remove the fetus alive. The other is, the version is, in Italian language, Caesar word means cut. So cedar is the word, and based upon that, cutting, this word came in. Of course, whatever the issue, the certain of the historical facts which are mentioned in the different texts of these articles about the medical history would say, like, the Roman law under Caesar declared that all women who were ill-fated by childbirth must be cut open. Hence, the name Caesarean. So this is what the one of the history says. And interestingly, before the technique of cesarean came in the Western, it was not on the live mother. Almost a similar situation as what Social has said, like only in the dead mother conditions you will be opening the abdomen. And the Western, in Africa, the people were practicing a situation where even in the live mother, this abdomen, opening of the abdomen and delivery of the child abdominally was practiced, and this is what's mentioned in the Western medicine as such. A British traveller, R.F. Felkin, had noted and observed that Africa reported instances of indigenous people successfully carrying out the procedure with their own medical practices, and in 1879 this was witnessed by a Western physician, and with the development of anesthesia so on, surgery gradually picked up in living mothers too. So in the Western practice it developed only after saw that the surgery was done on live mothers and the mothers were surviving in African countries, and that it started with the procedure. And again, from all these sentences I have copied as such from the different sources. According to one estimate, not a single woman survived caesarean section in Paris between 1787 to 1876. In the last 100 years, people started practicing this surgery on the live women with an idea of saving the child, but in 100 years, almost not a single woman survived. But the situation now has changed. The technologies have now improved. Caesarean has become quite safe, and the issue now is, in the span of around 400 to 500 years, the situation has changed, where it started with the surgery on the dead mother, and then gradually shifted over to the surgery in the living mother with poor prognosis. Now it has come to a situation where the incidence of the caesarean section is increasing. Many times it's more than the 50% as such in some areas, some countries it's going, and that's one of the issue of concern. The concern now is about the increase in the number of caesarean sections which are unnecessary. I have just copied the WHO statement on caesarean section. Again, it's directly copied without any of my additions. Caesarean sections are absolutely critical to save lives in situations where vaginal deliveries would pose risks. So all health system must ensure timely access for all women when needed. This is what WHO says. But not all the caesarean sections carried out at the moment are needed for medical reasons. Unnecessary surgical procedures can be harmful both for woman and her baby. This is the point, and now WHO has made it as something of a standard, like not more than 10% of the deliveries should have caesarean section. But this is not rigidly implemented. But whenever there is a increase in the number, if the number of caesarean section is more than 10%, there is a need to review the whole protocol of that hospital. That's the real current situation, but these are not implemented very rigidly, and the present day's issue is how to reduce the number of caesarean section and how to avoid that unnecessary caesarean sections as such. I will not go into that controversy much as such, but this is about the whole this chain of events which have occurred in the span of 500 years in the medical history, and interesting. Then the next is Aushadhani Viladhyat Yathoktani. The treatment has to be followed with the medicines. Then Mriteka, if the child has been, fetus is dead, Uttanaya Abhunna Satyaha Vastradharaka Unnamita Katyaya Dharma Naga Vrittika Shalmili Nrustna Grisabhyam Nakshaitva Hastam Yono Pravesha Garbham Upahareta. If the fetus is dead and the mother is alive, you have to make the mother lie in lithotomy position and introduce the hand with the after sterilizing with the different substances like Dhanvanagam or Salmali or Bhrisda. These are applied over the hand, and then with the hand try to remove the fetus. तत्र शक्तिभ्याम् आगतम् अनुलोमम् एव अवाञ्छेत. If there is a limb presentation, it is the thigh which is presented, you can pull out with the same direction. Ekasatna pratipannasya itarasaktim prasarya apaheta. If it is a single limb which is presented, then it has to be flexed back, pushed back, and then the other limb also has to be pulled out, and then it has to be presented. I think these are all the issues which we have discussed in the Nidhanasthana. That's the unless important is to ensure that the part, the presenting part is the relatively narrower. Of course, even now a single limb presentation is considered to be having extremely poor prognosis, and there the technique of possible technique of paravaginal delivery would be exactly the same. Like you have to pull, if possible, the other limb has to be pulled down as such. Now, of course, these procedures are done in even case of the live fetus conditions, whereas Sushruta had limited these in those conditions that the fetus is not alive. Swigdeshan agatase swigdesham pravidya urdhum tiksha saktine prasarya bhareta. In a pelvic presentation, the pelvis has to be pulled up as such, and then delivery with the limb. But in the present day situation, we may not follow the same protocol. Delivery by the pelvis also is possible if you follow the rotation protocol. It has to be twisted, rotated anteriorly, and a pelvic delivery is possible. तिर्यगागतस्य परिघस्यैव तिरश्चिनस्य पश्चात् अर्धम् ऊर्ध्वम् उत्क्षिप्य पूर्वार्धम् अपत्यपथं प्रत्यार्जवम् आनीय अपहरेत्. If there is a transverse presentation, the transverse presentation has to be manipulated externally, and that I think we have already discussed this issue in the Nilanasthana. Manipulation may be possible before the part has become engaged, and then the transverse presentation can be corrected by external manipulation. But if the presentation has occurred, that would be a very critical condition. Parshva apurta shirasam amsam prepedya urdhum kishvya shiro apatyapatam aniya apharetam. If there is the head is twisted to a side, that's a shoulder, single shoulder presentation conditions, there it has to be pushed back, and then again it has to be corrected. Of course, if possible, this is the same situation then, but most of the times this may not be possible because of the tone of the uterus, and hence that again would be quite difficult. Bahadvaya pratipannasya urdhum utpidya amso shiro anulomam aniya aphareta. Sushruta has suggested about if the upper limb, the hands are presented as a presenting part, then they have to be pushed back, and then the head has to be extended. Of course, in the present day situation, we may not be able to do that because we are handling with the live babies there, and it may not be the possible option. And the present day situation, upper limb presentations is always preferred to have a caesarean section. Dvavantyau asadhyam mudagarbhoyam mashakya shastram avjareta. In the other conditions, other two conditions, it may not be possible to handle this with the simple intervention, and hence there you need to have the surgical intervention where the presenting part has to be cut and then it has to be removed. Sachesanam cha shastrena nakathanchana dareta daryamano hi jananim atmanam chaiva ghateta avishashye vikaretu shreyo garbhasya pataram nagarbhinyaha viparyasaha tasmat praptam nahapayeta. If the fetus is alive, then do not use any sharp instrument. Do not cut the presenting part. Petotomy is contraindicated in a live fetus. This is what Sushruta has said. And if at all you have cut the fetus or injured the fetus, it can even produce a fatal complication to the mother too. And in all the situations, if there is a need for preferring the preferences, like where you cannot save both and where you have to save only one, in such a condition, Shreyo Garbhasya Patram is better to ensure that, better to see that the mother is alive at the cost of the fetus, because there is a chance that if the mother is alive, there is a fair chance that she may conceive again and a normal fetus could be delivered. So that's about the priorities as such, and that's very absolutely true. Now, as far as the petotomy is concerned, the technique of cutting the fetus and removal of the fetus, तत्र स्त्रियम् आश्वास्य मण्डलाग्रेण अङ्गुलीशस्त्रेण वा शिरो विदार्य शिरःकपालान्याहृत्य शङ्कुना गृहीत्वा उरसि कक्षायां वा अपहरेत् अभिन्नशिरसम् अक्षिकूटे गण्डे वा अंशसंसक्तम् अस्य अंशसंसक्तस्य अंशदेशे बाहु छित्त्वा धृतिमिव आततं वातपूर्णोदरं वा विदार्य निरस्य आन्त्राणि शिथिलीभूतम् आहरेत् जघनसक्तस्य वा जघनकपालानि इति. Now, in a situation where the mother is alive but the fetus is dead, you have to counsel the mother, and the fetal parts, the presenting parts of the fetus are cut. Now, petotomy surgery in the West also was practiced earlier, but now these days petotomy is generally not attempted because it looks very crude, and the petotomy is practiced in the veterinary practice more frequently than in the human obstetrics conditions. In the Western conditions too, in 18th century, petotomy was regularly practiced, and you have some of the instruments used for the petotomy surgeries were exactly similar issue, like the presenting part, whatever the presenting part is there and which produces the obstruction has to be cut. And the whole philosophy of the petotomy by Sushruta is यद्यदङ्गं हि गर्भस्य तस्य सज्जति तद्विषयक सम्यक् विनिहरेत् छित्त्वा रक्षेत् नारीं चेत्नतः. In the petotomy, the whole basic principle is you have to save the life of the mother, and whatever the presenting part of the fetus which is producing the obstruction, that has to be cut and ensure that it has to be removed. To remove that, you may follow any of these protocols, like if it is the head which is presented, then you may have to puncture the head, and then these bones of the head have to be removed. Or you may have to have a hook and then hold the shoulder and then pull out. Or if abhinashirasam akshikute gandeva, if you do not want to puncture the head, then hold the hook over the akshikuta, over the orbital area or over the temporal area, and pull the baby. So hook is presented, not these forceps. Like if it is a shoulder, then the arms may have to be cut off, and if the abdomen is distended, the abdomen may have to be punctured and the intestines have to be removed. These are the certain of the protocols suggested. Now, if these protocols cannot be followed, in that condition, Sushruta says, Garbhasya gateshchitraha jayante anilokopataha tatra analpamati vaidyo varteta vishipurvakam na upekshet amritam garbham muhurtam api panditaha sahi ashu jananim hanti nirutchvasam pashum yatha. Now, the fetus, if at all you cannot follow those stated protocols, then being use of your intelligence, a Vaidya may follow any of the other protocols, cut any of the presenting part to ensure the life of the mother, and there should not be any delay in handling of a dead fetus. A dead fetus left over in the uterus can be fatal to the mother too. It is one of the major sources for the toxemia, and hence it has to be removed as early as possible. Mandalagrena kartavam chedyam antarvijanata ruddhipatram hi tikshnagram nariyam himsyat kadachana atha apatantim aparam. Now, whenever you prefer a instrument, it has to be an instrument which has a curved appearance, and the outer part of the curve is relatively blunt, and only the inner part of the curve is sharper. That's Mandalagra Shastra, so that the chances of injury to the uterus would be lesser. A instrument which is having a projected surface is not preferred. Ruddhipatram hitikshnagram naryam ruddhipatra is not preferred. So, in all petotomy surgery, even in the Western practice, it is a similar issue. The basic structure of an instrument in a petotomy would be of this nature, where the inner surface would be sharper and the outer surface will be blunt, so that the chances of injuring the uterus would be lesser. As I told you, in the present day situation, petotomy in a human being is very rare, extremely rare condition now, whereas it's done in the veterinary practice, and in the veterinary practice also the same principles are used as such. Then another complication which can occur would be the placenta which has not been delivered, the third stage of the labor being delayed. In such conditions, अथ अपतन्तीम् अपरां पातयेत् पूर्वभ्यशक हस्तेन अभरेद्वापि पार्श्वाभ्यां परिपीड्य वा धूम्याच्च मुहुर्नारीं पीडयद्वा हंसपिण्डिकां तैलाक्तयोनेः एवं तां पातयेत् मतिमान् भिषक एवं निर्हृतशल्यां तु सिञ्चेत् उष्णेन वारिणा ततो अभ्यक्तशरीरायाः योनौ स्नेहं निधापयेत् एवं मृद्वी भवेत् योनिः तच्छूलं च उपसाम्यति. The placenta, if it is not delivered, it has to be tried, pulled out, and it can be pulled out by introducing your hand in and then trying to pull out, or if necessary, you may just press from the exterior over the shoulder, or a rigorous movement of the abdomen could be done. And after the removal, the patient has to be given bath with warm water, and the basti has to be given, sneha basti has to be given, uttara basti has to be given. And substances, drugs which could be used are Krishna, Tanmula, Shumthi, Yela, Hingu, Bhargi, Sadipyakaha, Vacham, Ativisham, Rasnam, Chavyam, Sanchurne Payet. Internally, these are the drugs which could be given. Snehena doshachindanartham Vedana Upashamaya cha Kwatam cha Esham Tatha Kalkam Churnam Snehavarjidam Shaka Tvak Hingu Ativisha Patha Katubarohini Tatha Tejavatim Chapi Payet Purva Bishaka. Specific medicines which are of Ushna, Tikshna Guna are to be given so that the wound will heal. Triratram Panchasattaham va Tata Sneham Punapipeta Payeta Asavam Naktam Arishtam va Susanskritam. After 3 days or 5 days or maybe for a week, then the Snehapana has to be given, and Arishtas also can be given. And the Arishtas which are suggested are Shirisha Kakubhabhyam Chatwayam Achamanehitam. The could be of different varieties of arista could be given, and Shirisha and Arjuna, these are used for cleaning the area. Upatravashti hernias shoes tan yathaswam pachareta. Any of the other complications may occur, they have to be treated as they are presented. Sarvata parishuddhacha snigdha pathya alpabhojana sweda abhyanga paranityam bhavet krodha vivarjita payo vataharehi siddham dashaham bhojane hitam rasam dashaham sheshe yatha yogam upachareta. Vipadravam vishuddham cha jnatva cha varavarninim urdhvam chaturbhyo mamsebhyo visarjayetu pariharataha. In the post-operative period, the mother has to be cleaning every day, taking bath every day. Abhyanga Sveda also have to be followed regularly, and for 10 days she has to have Vatahara Ahara, and after that the more nourishing diet like Dashaha for any other drugs could be given. Now another usual controversy or maybe certain criticism would be, there is one strong criticism that the Indian traditional midwifery involves a lot of rigid protocols and unscientific protocols, like where the mother has to be kept in a closed room, and she has to be kept outside the village. I think you have read about the news also recently, or lots of other misrepresentations or maybe abnormal or odd practices are followed certainly in the folklore area, but they are not Ayurvedic. They are not Ayurvedic practices. Many times the people say that the Ayurvedic practice of dealing with the mother involves such protocols. Not at all. The Ayurvedic protocol of dealing with the mother in the postpartum period is maintaining of the hygiene, keeping her open, making her active, and a nourishing diet. Vatahara Ahara is the same protocol, and this has to be very clear. Like certain of those odd protocols which are followed in the folklore, they are not to be considered as a part of Ayurvedic practice. That's all the important issue. Then Yoni Santarpane Abhyange Pane Bastishu Bhojane Balatailamidam Shasyam Dadyala Nilavarnam Balamula Kashayasya Dashamuli Shudasya Yava Kola Kulathanam Vatasya Payasastada Astau Shubha Bhagaha Tairodakas Tadekataha Patil Avapya Mudhuram Gadam Saindava Sanyutam Tata Agurum Sarjalasam Saralam Devadaruja Mandishtam Chandanam Kustam Velam Kalan Sarivam Mansim Shailekam Patram Tagaram Sarivam Mutam Shatavarim Ashwagandham Shatapushpam Punarvam Tat Sadhu Siddham Savarne Rajate Mayabi Prakship Kalashe Samyak Sonadutum Nidhar better Balatelandam Kyatam Sarvo Vatavikaran. Balataila is considered to be one of the most effective treatment in case of the puerperal care, and it involves all Brahmana Aushadis and Raktashodaka Aushadis, Kashaya Rasa and Brahmana Madhura Aushadis, and these could be used for Yoni Santarpada. That's the Uttarabasti, Abhyanga, applying over the body, Pane, internal administration, or Basti. Also, in all forms, Balataila can be used. यथाबलम अतो मात्रां सुजिकाये प्रदापयत याच गर्भास्तिनी नारी क्षीणशुक्रस्य पुमान वातक्षीणे मर्महते मथिते अभियते तथा भग्ने श्रणाभिपन्ने च सर्वथा एव उपयुज्यते एतत् आक्षेपकादीन् वै वातव्याधीन् अपोहति हिक्कां कासाम् अधिमन्दं गुल्मं श्वासं च दुस्तरं षण्मासान् उपयुज्य एतत् अन्तर्वृद्धिम् अपोहति तत्यग्रधातुः पुरुषो भवेच्च स्थिरयौवनः राज्ञाम् एतद्धि कर्तव्यं राजमात्राश्च युवनरः Sukhina Sukumarascha Dhininas ये नरः. The Balataila can, it's not only for the perpetual care, it can be used in other conditions too. The other conditions, even after the completion of the perpetual period, to facilitate the another conception in the mother, to make the mother capable of conceiving again, Balataila is preferred. In all the patients who have Marmabhigata or Vataja Vyadhis, Bhagna or plenty of other disorders like Akshepaka, Vatavyadhi, Hikka, Kasa, etc. It can be given, and it can be used as a general tonic for all the people. Rajnyam etati kartayam, Raja Matra stage, for the king also it can be given, and that's the Bala Taila. Bala Kashaya Pitebhya Dilebhya Vapya Nekashaha, Tailam Utpadya Tatvata Shatapakam Kutakridam Shubham, Nimate, Nibhrata Gare, Pranjite Tabalam. जीर्णे अस्मिन् पयसा स्निग्धम् अश्नीयात् षष्टिकौदनम् अनेन बिजिनात् द्रोणम् उपयुज्यात् अन्नम् ईरितं भुञ्जीत द्विगुणं कालं बलवर्णान्वितस्तदा सर्वपापैः विनिर्मुक्तः शतायुः पुरुषो भवेत् शतं शतं तथा उत्कर्षो द्रोणे द्रोणे प्रकीर्तितः. Another method of preparing balakashaya is these sesame seeds are processed with the balakashaya, and then the taila is extracted with the shatapaka krama. And this also can be used as an alternative to the previous Balataila. Balakalpena, Atibala, Guduchi, Aditya Pranishu, Saireke, Virataro, Shotavaryam Trikantake, Tailani Basuke Kuriada, Prasadinyam Buddhimana. Similarly, as in case of Bala, Atibala, Guduki, etc., also can be used for the similar protocols. Then the other drugs which could be used are Nilotpalam, Marimulam, Gabiek, Shire, Vipaketa, Shatapakam Tadasena, Tilatilam Pate Bhishaka. बलातैलस्य कल्कांस्तु सुविष्टां तत्रदापयत् सर्वेषामेव जानीयात् उपयोगं चिकित्सकः बलातैलवत् एतेषां गुणांश्च विषये. Another alternative to Balataila is a Nilotpalavarimulla, etc., and with the similar as Balataila it can be used. But in summary, all of them are nourishing food medicines and which enhance the build of the body and maybe facilitate the this anabolic activity. So it's not that the mother is deprived of the food. See, one of the major criticism or the folklore practice is in the folklore practice after the delivery, mother is deprived of the nourishing food. But Ayurveda never says about that. Ayurveda says that the mother has to be given nourishing food which is easily digestible. With this, we conclude the Mudhagarbhachikitsa iti Sushrutamitaam Chikitsastane Mudhagarbhachikitsa nama Panchadashodhyayah. If there are any questions, I'll try to answer and then. Right, okay, there are no questions, so we will conclude today. Right, so